have the tarsals. The tarsals, that's the ankle, the bones of the ankle, then the metatarsals, then the phalanges. That's the part of the leg. Now we move on to talk about the joints. What are joints? You know, I've mentioned things that are similar to joints earlier. Joints are points where two or more bones meet. The points where we have two or more bones, and we have a lot of joints in our body because we have several bones. We have about 206 bones. So, and since it's not just a singular bone, so we have various points that those bones join together to form the whole mammalian skeleton. Then, also in the joints, we have the cartilage. You remember we talked about cartilage earlier, that they act as shock absorbers for the body. Just like you have shock absorbers in your vehicles, the cartilage are the one that absorbs the shock that comes to the body. Then also the joints has synovial fluid, which allow the surface to move easily over one another. There is a fluid around the joints that allows the surfaces to move easily over another. As you move or as you do some other things, the synovial fluid is the one that allows easy movement of the bones over one another. There is a contraction of the muscles attached to the bones that produce movements. When the bones that are, there are muscles that are attached to the bones. When they contract, then movement is produced. Also, tough, fibrous, inelastic ligaments hold the joints together and prevent dislocation during normal movements. We move, and why don't the bone just get out of shape in normal movements? Is due to the presence of these tough, fibrous, inelastic ligaments that hold the bones together. So it prevents it from dislocating during normal movements. There are two main groups of joints. We have the immovable joints and the movable joints. The immovable joints are the joints that don't move. You don't find them moving when the body is moving. While the movable joints are those ones that easily moves. For example, the immovable joints, we have the bones of the skull. They don't move like that. They don't move, even though they are bones. They are joined together by what we call suture. Then the sacral region too don't move. The joints in the pelvic girdle too don't move. They are called the movable joints. Unlike the wrist bone, is moving. You can easily move it. The bones are moving. That's a movable joint. The knee, your knee too moves. Then your elbow, the shoulder, those are examples of movable joints. The part that moves. You cannot see the bones of the skull making some movement like that. It's not normal. So we have movable and immovable joints. So now comes to talk about the movable joints, the types of movable joints that we have. The first is the ball and socket joints. The ball and socket joints, it consists of a round edge that fits into a cup-shaped cavity for all directional movements. A round edge that fits into a cup-shaped cavity for all directional movements. Look at this diagram. You can see a round edge that fits into something like a cup at this part for all round movements. And the example of such type of joint is found in your shoulder. You see, it's an all-round movement. That's an example of a ball and socket joint. The joints of the shoulder is an example. Also, the joints of the hip. When you look at that other diagram of the whole skeletal system of the body, you look at this kind of structure, you find it at the hip too. So we have it at the shoulder, then at the hip. That's the kind of bone at the hip. So it can also move all round, just like your shoulder can move. The next kind of joints is the hinge joints. The hinge joints is a type of joint that allows for only one direction of movement, just in one direction, unlike the ball and socket that moves in all directions. The hinge joint moves in only one direction. as we have in the knee and in the elbow. Look, this is the elbow, so this direction. It can't move this, it's just one way. It cannot move the other way. As it's moving up and down like this, also move like that. No, it's just this one direction. So also for your knee, it's just one way. One way movement is allowed in each joint, and we have the example in knee and the elbow joint. The next joints or the next movable joints, we have the gliding or the sliding joints. These are several small bones that move smoothly and easily over each other. Several small bones that move easily and smoothly over each other, as we have in the wrist and the ankle joints. There are several small bones around this place, but they move easily over each other. Then also the carpus and the tartarus bones. They are also examples of the gliding joints. The last type of the movable joints is the pivot joints. And this kind of joint operates in this way. That is, one bone rotates on the other. You have the atlas on the axis. Remember that we said the first cervical vertebrae is the atlas, while the second one is the axis. So the atlas rotating on the axis, the movement of the head, it's found at the back of your neck. So rotating on each other, that's an example of a pivot joint. So an example of a pivot joint is the atlas on the axis. Now we move on to talk about bone injuries. Injuries of the bones. We're talking about bones, joints, and things like that. So we want to look at the abnormalities that occur with the bones. A fracture is a crack of bone that usually occur as a result of accident or injury. A crack of the bone that occur as a result of accident or injury is called fracture. Then we have various types of fracture. We have the simple fracture. In a simple fracture, the bone is not broken. It's just a little damage that is done to the surrounding tissue of that bone. So that's what we call a simple fracture. The bone is not broken in a simple fracture. It's just the surrounding tissue of the bone that is damaged in a little way, or it's not even damaged at all. That's a simple fracture. Then the second type of fracture is the compound fracture. In a compound fracture, we have considerable damage done to both the bones or the singular bone. It depends on how terrible it is. Both the bones or the surrounding tissue, both of them are affected. A considerable damage is done to the bones and the surrounding tissues. Then the broken end of the bone may come out through the skin or an open wound. For instance, when a part of the bone is broken, the broken end may come out through the skin or the open wound in a compound fracture. Then the third type of fracture that we have is the comminuted fracture. Comminuted fracture has a crack in the bone. Then the bones are reduced to pieces near the broken part. So you have small pieces of bones. That's what is called a comminuted fracture. There are pieces of bones, that are very, very tiny pieces near the broken parts of the bone. Then the next type of fracture is the impacted fracture. This impacted fracture, the bone ends at the break enter into each other. The bone ends at the break enter into each other, then causes the limb to be shorter than the other. That is, for instance, let's assume this is a bone and it breaks. Maybe the length is like 20 centimeters, but they now enter into each other and it reduces to like 15 centimeters. It has reduced because it has entered each other. Instead of it to join at a particular point at the joint, it entering into each other causes the limb to be shorter than the other. For instance, you see some people that they have a particular limb longer than the other. That's what we call impacted fracture. The bone enter into each other when they break, then it causes the limb to be shorter than the other. The last type of fracture that I'll be talking about is the grain stick fracture. This is a simple fracture in which the bone is bent. The bone is bent, but it's not completely broken. It is common in children. This type of grain stick fracture is common in children with flexible bones. You know, the bones of children are more flexible than what we have in the adults. So grain stick fracture is common in children. It's a simple fracture, but it results in a bend, not a break. It's not completely broken. It's a bend in the bone that is common in children. Still talking about tissues and supporting system, we move on to talk about supporting tissues in plants. You know, we talked about supporting tissues in animals, where we talked about the endo and the exoskeleton. So we move on to talk about the supporting tissues that plants possess. And first, we're talking about the functions of supporting tissues in plants. Number one, the supporting tissues make definite shape possible. They bring about definite shape of the plant. Also, strength. They strengthen the plant and make it strong. They make the plant strong, the supporting tissues. Then the next function of the supporting tissues is that they make the plants rigid. They provide rigidity in plants. And the last one is that they make the plants resistant